gunshots fired. Officers arrived, and their attention was drawn to a male who was on the ground bleeding and had gunshot wounds. At that point, the male was still alive, and he was transported by HFD to an area hospital. He has since been pronounced deceased. Officers, while canvassing the area trying to get additional information, received some information that provided sufficient probable cause to believe that there was evidence inside of one of the apartments directly adjacent to where the male was found bleeding on the ground. So homicide was working the investigation. There were some safety concerns because there was someone unaccounted for who possibly had a weapon. So for those reasons, the processing of the scene had been delayed. The Forensic Science Center was not able to come out to process the scene at that time due to those safety concerns. Homicide Division was able to file a search warrant. They contacted SWAT for assistance with running the search warrant due to those safety concerns. Again, we had a shooting that just occurred. We had a male who had been shot and at that point was deceased. And we believe that evidence was inside of an apartment, and there was an unknown person, unaccounted for, unknown whether he was armed or not. So we proceeded with the utmost caution. SWAT came out, we had our negotiators, and we exhausted every option available to try to make contact with the person who was inside. We were unable to get a positive response or establish communication. Again, we had a lawful search warrant, we announced our presence, we made it clear that why we were there and that he needed to come out. He never came to the door. So eventually, having exhausted all of those methods, waiting a reasonable amount of time, we finally breached the door. We breached the door, the male finally announced his presence, and one of our SWAT officers was able to take over communications, provide some verbal instructions to the male who was coming out of the apartment. It took a few minutes, but he came down without incident, and so that male is now at 1200 Travis, and he will be interviewed by Homicide Division. Again, we're here for the purpose of serving a search warrant. The male is being interviewed. Homicide is conducting their investigation, and although now it is over 9 hours since the incident began, it's still a relatively fresh scene because there were some impediments to continuing the investigation just due to safety concerns. So that's where we stand right now. I don't have many details to speak on behalf of Homicide Division because they really need to get that interview with that male and to allow the Forensic Science Center to process the scene to see exactly what evidence is out here. So that's where we stand right now.
You never made contact with, what made you think he was still in there?
So early on in the scene, a patrol officer did have contact with communication with somebody who was at the apartment. So we were pretty confident that he was in fact in there.
And that loud bang that we heard, was that the door breach?
Right, we were breaching the door.
What happened? Can you explain it? Is there any way you can tell us what happened in that situation?
So without getting into the specifics of the tactics, you know, we have breachers who are trained master breachers, and they look at the various tools that are in their toolbox. There's a variety of methods to use, and they determine the best method. In this case, what I can say is that there were some tactical disadvantages to us, and so rather than some of the lower key attempts to breach, we did use a method that created that loud noise.
Hey, Commander Howard, just so I'm clear, so the shooting and where that guy was found dead, that was all around that apartment?
Exactly. It was all contained in the same space.
Any other questions?
The deceased individual was right by that apartment as well?
Right. He was laying just outside of that apartment when officers arrived.
How many gunshots?
Not sure. I don't have that.
Multiple?
I'm not sure. The call for service indicated several shots were fired.
That'll come from homicide. Is the
Yep.
weapon recovered?
Homicide will speak to that. I believe there were some weapons that were recovered, but they'll release that information, any other pertinent information, to the investigation later with their release.
Any drugs, anything of that nature?
I don't have any information regarding drugs at this time.
What was the significance of the warrant?
What's that?
What was the significance of the warrant itself?
So it was a search warrant to obtain additional evidence that might be related to this incident. In order to obtain a search warrant, you know, our detectives have to swear under oath and establish a pretty high burden that there's probable cause to lead them to believe that there's additional evidence inside. Those search warrants are public record, and so Once the return is made, it'll be available through the traditional means.
How many, I guess, how much time did it pass between you guys finding out about this incident and getting the search warrant? You said 9 hours, but the response wasn't this long, right?
No, and I don't have like the how long it took for officers to arrive from the initial call for service, but obviously they arrived and there was a male who was still alive at that point, transported. So I would say that they arrived in a timely manner, and everything else just it takes time. You know, it takes time for officers to locate potential witnesses. It takes time to verify information. And again, there's a pretty high burden from a legal standpoint when it comes to forcing entry into someone's residence. So it just takes time for all of that to happen. And when you have additional safety concerns, that just slows things down. So instead of the detective being able to go right up to a door and knock on a door and talk to somebody, they've got safety concerns and everything just slows down. And we're going to use appropriate caution to ensure the safety of everyone involved. It's not just for our safety, but also for the public. And so those are the things that go into our decision making and how we approach scenes.
You always have a tough scene to bring the squad apartments being, I guess, more, like you said, safety of a lot of residents.
Yep.
How is that more difficult for SWAT?
So there's a lot of traffic, and at different times of the day we know there's going to be more traffic coming and going, so that's always a concern. We end up having to cordon off an area, and you know we try to give fair warning, give people an opportunity to choose whether they're going to stay where they are or leave if they're inside of that space that's cordoned off. And then you know for a good chunk of the night, you know, probably there was not as much traffic, but as morning rush hour comes, people need to get up and either go to work, take kids to school, whatever their daily routine is. Usually things start getting active 7, 8, 9 o'clock, and that's exactly what we saw. So that's one of the challenges. And then just confined spaces. You have shared walls, so we're always worried about you know, adjoining units and neighbors, and our safe and innocent bystanders are certainly at the top of our safety priorities, along with our complainants, right? So those are the ones we were most concerned about, and it takes a little extra time to get everything set up.
Can you tell us anything about the suspect, about how old he was?
So he was, I believe he was, so not a suspect at this point. We have someone who's detained for additional questioning by Homicide Division, and the male that came out of the apartment, I believe, was in his 60s.
Any other questions? Your name and your title once again.
Yeah, you bet. Megan Howard, Commander with the Houston Police Department, Tactical Operations Division. MEGAN HOWARD.